Okay, welcome everybody to the FileMaker Pro user group, Dallas, Texas. We're glad to have you. I'm Taylor Sharp. Myself and Greg Price are the chapter co-coordinators, so we're glad to have everybody here today. As far as announcements, I guess the only real big announcement out there that won't be covered by our main topic here is that there will be an Engage Developers Conference next February, so we'll be returning to in-person conferences down in Austin. So any of you in the Texas area, this is going to be real easy for. So that'll be good and exciting. Let's see, are there any other FileMaker announcements other than the new version? Greg, you have anything for us?
I do not. I don't think we've gotten any more information on the on Engage as far as like accommodations or anything like that, right?
Yeah, there's no registration or anything going yet. It's just been announced, so, but I'll be sure to jump on. I'm sure since it's not a destination place, there won't be a single hotel. So, but like always, wherever the hotels that are going to be near it will probably sell out quickly. So if you are going to go, you probably want to, as soon as they start making them available, jump on getting a hotel spot. So.
Oh, and I think registration for this year's Pause on Error, which is again in October, is opening up in a couple of weeks. Is it not, or did it already open?
I thought it was doing next week.
I think it's
next
Monday.
week.
I think it's actually.
Oh wow, Monday.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so Monday. I should have been on top of that one.
If you haven't been to Pause on Air, it's they're probably about, I don't know, 150 people or something go to it. It tends to be more advanced people, but it's a very casual setting, and it's also up in the woods. And anyway, if you haven't ever been to one and want to go to a small type conference where you're going to have a lot of one-on-one with other people, it's a great conference. I've gone to it the last couple of years. So, you know, a good plug for Pause. So anyway, okay, so let's turn our meeting today. So if any of you haven't heard, we've got a new version of FileMaker that is now out. So we're all excited to hear about it. We have some of the FileMaker, or excuse me, the Claris team here to tell us about it. So we've got Douglas, Ronnie, and Rosemary here. We appreciate you guys being here. Douglas is going to give our main presentation, and I actually haven't personally met Douglas, but I hope to someday, maybe at Engage. So Douglas, without further ado, if you're ready, we're ready to hear from you.
Thanks, Taylor. So good morning or good afternoon where you are based in US. So my name is Doug Wallace. I'm the FileMaker product manager. Been at Claris for roughly about 8.5 years now. As you get from the name, I'm actually French and actually based on the west coast of France. So if I look out there, I can see the edge of North Carolina. And today with me is Rosemary, that you'll know, and Ronnie, that I'm pretty sure most of you already know as well. So we're going to talk about FileMaker 2023 today. Share my screen, got a nice sort of making sure it's the right day. So FileMaker 2023. So we moved on from having a FileMaker 19 and all the updates that came out over the last 3 years, and moving to a new version called 2023. The product version inside it is actually version 20.1. And the main reason we'd actually move forward from going to iteration of 19 and moving to 20 is, and I'll explain through this, there's a lot of work that we want to do in the core engine of the FileMaker product to be able to actually sort of improve it and make it better, especially in terms of performance, scalability, fixing bugs, security. We have to be able to actually kind of move forward. And the only way we can do that is by limiting the amount of older versions of FileMaker that we support, so that we can actually update a lot of the third-party tools that we use inside the system. So 3 years ago, vaguely, we released FileMaker 19. We were really going on the idea of actually making it an open platform. When we say open, essentially was to be able to actually integrate more of the great features that everyone uses on a daily basis on the internet, namely JavaScript, and to be able to integrate that easily inside of FileMaker. And with our vision is to say, FileMaker has always been very good at integrating with other systems, whether it's databases, pretty much everything is out there. And we just want to make sure that new customers actually are aware of that and actually see that FileMaker is a great platform because it has this great openness with other systems around it. A lot of the work that the FileMaker team has been working for the last 6 to 9 months on getting this new version out is the working on continuous improvement of the clients or the server-side product we have, and working really closely with partners, developers, large organizations, pretty much everyone, to be able to actually sort of figure out is what are you doing with the product? And if you have issues, how do we work together to be able to actually fix whether there are bugs or problems in the platform so that you could actually leverage FileMaker at a current number and it actually does work for you. And on top of that, we were basically still being committed to continue investing heavily on the FileMaker platform, in all of cases by leveraging some of the other product that we have, like Studio and Connect, to get the platform to do a lot more stuff for you. This is a short quote from one of our MVP from the community, Joshua. I think everyone knows him. And he likes it. And we are getting a lot of similar quotes from other partners and developers across the world, where they do like what we've actually done with FileMaker. So it makes us think that we kind of know our customers, we know how to talk to our customers and our partners, and we are basically on the same train. So we're going to start going through some of the new features in Claris Pro, some of the enhancements that we've put, just to make sure that everyone is aware of what we have. So the first one is a new script trigger that we put into the system. It's called on-window transaction. The idea behind it is to enable developer to start creating an easier way to do audit logging inside the FileMaker. So for the last 20, 30 years, I don't know how many versions of people creating audit logging system inside the FileMaker. I think the last count is about like 35 or 36 different versions of it, using various type of calculation, custom function, a bit of everything. And when we were working in 19.6 and working on bringing out the 3 new script steps around transaction, we're kind of looking at, is there anything else we could do where, because now we are actually opening up the way that FileMaker can either pause the way transaction actually work inside the FileMaker, whether we can do more stuff around it. So transactions been pretty much in FileMaker since FileMaker 7, but everything was closed before. It was kind of hard sometimes to actually being able to actually grab data. And so with the transaction script steps and this new script trigger, we kind of basically pausing when operation are being or transaction are being occurring in FileMaker and actually using that to grab some data to give it back to developers so that they can actually do stuff with it. So the on-transaction script step basically will create, when you're actually running it, so it's based on the file, not the layout. So you just have to activate once for the whole file. And what it's going to do is grab basic data for you in a JSON or through JSON script parameter. So the information we're going to give you every time will be the name of the file, the name of the table, and then we're going to give you basically the operation that occurs. So you've got 3 different types. It could be new, modify, or deleted. We'll give you the record ID of that record, and then we'll give you any information that you've put from a specific field. So that's where a lot of the work will come down to you, is you going to decide what information is actually stored in that field. So in the example that I have, basically, it's grabbing all the default field that you have in a table. But after that, you can do pretty much anything that you want to. So I'm going to do a quick demo to show you what it does. We've got a nice engineering blog entry that goes kind of deeply into it. And if you've been looking at blogs and partners, developers out there, there's already, I think, several different 8 blogs out there of people giving it basically an impression of what it can do and actually giving you demo files so that you can actually have an idea of what it can do. So quickly, I'm going to share, let's get the whole screen, easier that way. So this is a FileMaker file, kind of straightforward, couple of fields. I've got a text field, number field, a date field, timestamp, and a container, so general sort of stuff that I have out there. And what we've created around it is, and the that file will eventually come up on our engineering blog. Currently is, if you go to the engineering blog, you'll be able to see that we created the entry for that. And all the information that you have in that file is actually laid out in the blog entry. So the blog entry is actually very kind of long because it goes through all the various sort of stuff that you have to do. At the core of it, what it's actually doing is we did create a couple of custom functions where we are gathering the field names and the field data that it's being modified by the client. So we're grabbing the original value and then the one after that. So you'll be able to actually play with it. And then everything is afterwards exported into a JSON file. So this is my JSON file. It's called, I just said, just JSON. It's saved locally on my machine. I could save it anywhere I wanted to. And you'll see that whenever I actually do make a change inside this file, the data is going to be written. So if I create a new record, just create this one, you'll see that basically my JSON has been updated. And so you can see it's got the name of the file, the name of the table, the operation that I ran, so create a new entry, that's the record ID. And then the rest, so all of this information is the field that I created, which is called audit log, and it's a calculation field that's grabbing data from before the change and after the change, and it's putting that format. You could do pretty much anything that you wanted, really up to you to actually go and see what you want to do. So if I create another one with some random records, you'll see basically that file gets updated and it gets written at the rest of it. So if you have a huge amount of changes being done, eventually your JSON file is going to get quite big. So depending on how you want to use it, what you want to do with it, maybe you export the data into some Amazon S3 bucket, or you put it into a different FileMaker file. Really up to you to be able to actually sort of get that working. So that's the on-window transaction. Kind of straightforward, works really nicely, and really easy for people to play with. Stop that, share again my keynote. That is gone now, I think. The next one that we have is we've added some extra functions, so just to help you be able to take audit logging to the next sort of the next level if you wanted to. So the three functions are base table names, base table ID, and the option to actually get the base table name reference. This is just to help you be able to actually figure out when you're going to use audit logging to be able to actually track where the changes are being made in various environments, to just make your life a lot easier along the way. The next one that we have isn't really a new feature. It's enhancements to a feature that's been in FileMaker for a very long time, but due to changes in terms of security policies by the largest two sort of mail serving company, we had to basically make some changes. So send mail used to be a script step that you could either use the mail client of a desktop user, could use as SMTP information. But nowadays, especially if you're using Microsoft or Google, you have to go through the path of using OAuth 2.0 authentication to be able to actually send email from your FileMaker solution. The process of actually getting FileMaker to work is kind of straightforward because you can use the calculation engine in the background and pretty much fill in all the information. The area that is tricky is to get the information out of Google or Microsoft. So depending on the type of account you have in Microsoft, the account that you have in Google, it is kind of sometimes a bit hard to get the shared secret key, some of the APIs key and stuff like that. So we're working on writing a blog. It's rather long, so I'm sorry ahead of time when you get it and you start going through it. It's going to be basically a long blog. We are going to try to make sure that we give you in general the most amount of information that we can, but because we don't know how everyone's using either their Microsoft or Google account, a lot of it could be generic information. That being said, is we're going to try to get as much information to you. We're going to try to actually get even our success team to actually be able to help you as much as we can. We know the community is always really good to actually helping people out there, but that's basically is the caveat behind that. And I would say is, if that doesn't work for you, there's a great tool called Claris Connect that's going to allow you to quickly basically use the Outlook connector or the Google Mail connector and it'll probably take about 5 minutes to send one out, and you can do the same stuff. So you have both options, and that's the idea of the platform, is we give you basically all the tools, up to you to actually see which one you want to use. Next one, again, basically the wording actually says what it does. We had a lot of requests from people saying, yeah, when I run basically the server on the script, I never know what happens when it finished, it's kind of a pain. So what we did was basically bring a callback functionality inside the perform script on server. Just to people that haven't sort of seen it yet, we have actually now 2 script steps. So there's the initial one, which is called perform script on server. That one doesn't change. And we created another one with the callback script. This is just to basically make sure that people are aware of the changes. We didn't actually want to put it into the system and create confusion. So we split the 2, and then you can decide which one is going to work. And it's very straightforward. Is you send your script to the server. Once the script is finished running, FileMaker server will actually use the session identifier to actually talk back to the client, and we'll get the client to run whatever script is assigned in the callback script area. So it does basically what it says, very straightforward, and it works very nicely. And it's very useful because that way you could get users to be able to do, send information out to the server, doing some invoicing, quoting, whatever it needs to do. And when the action is finished, you could actually have some alerts coming back for the client, or do anything else that you can imagine, kind of straightforward. There's a lot of other small new features that we put into the product, or enhancements. The first one we mentioned, because it's kind of important in terms of security all around the planet, is we've moved everything in the 2023 release to OpenSSL 3.0.8. The reason for that is essentially because before that, we were splitting between 2 different versions of OpenSSL. We had version 3 and version 1. So for Ubuntu 18, for FileMaker server running on Ubuntu 18, we were still basically on OpenSSL 1. And with vulnerabilities coming out on OpenSSL, especially around 3.5 or 2.4, I can't remember, we really wanted to actually have everything using basically the latest version of SSL. And so that is one of the reasons why, in terms of the tech specs, the early version of FileMaker 19 that we'll be working with version of 20.1 are the latest 3, which is 19.4.2, 19.5, and 19.6. And so it's some of the work that basically is, in order to actually have the system even more secure, we have to limit the amount of platform, all the version of FileMaker that we support, to make sure everything works properly. We've extended the function of read QR codes that now we can work on FileMaker Pro on Windows and across the board on FileMaker servers, so that Ubuntu and Windows users can actually use that function as well. In terms of the get live text function, which essentially is for getting text out of images on iPhones, we've added extra languages, so Japanese, Korean, and Ukrainian, and now you could actually use it as well on the FileMaker server. We made quite a lot of investment, a lot of work, especially in terms of testing, to make sure that the PDF engine that we use on Windows works better than before. It now can do proper generation of thumbs-up or PDF on Windows. So that's a big release, basically, because if you're using that PDF on Windows and you were trying to actually view them, sometimes it's creating some issues. We've added the dark mode support for the relation graph inside of the macOS. For the API, we've added the support of the date format. So for the US market, that's important, but if you're working with European customers, that's quite a benefit, especially when you will control how you do the order of dates or days in the week, how you want to do the time and stuff like that. So very useful for global organization. And we roughly have about 500 bugs that we fixed since 19.6. We're not going to give out all the bugs that we have fixed, because in all of cases, it takes way more time to explain what the bug was and how we fixed it than actually telling you that it's fixed, and then bit of trust, will be fine. But we've got a release note page on the FileMaker website that outlines the main bug fixes that we actually have done. So there's quite a lot on WebDirect, on Windows. There's general a bit everywhere. Next one, it's really tiny, but it's something that basically we kind of forgot to actually update across the years, is the size of the stencils. for doing your layouts. So we've added basically the size for Windows 40, the iPhone 14, the iPhone 13 mini, the SE3, and 2 versions of the iPad, so 1 mini and 1 Pro. That had been changed for a very long time. So we just thought it could be useful for all of the developers, especially newer developers, that way they can actually make sure they have the right size for those devices. So this is the tech spec information. You can find it as well on our website. So supporting systems, it's the current version and the one before that. So for Mac OS, it's 13 and 12, and then we support Windows 11 and 10. We do many of the testing on the very latest version of those 2 releases, so the 22H2 version, to make sure that they work properly on those. And in terms of the host, so I was saying before, for interoperability purposes, you'll need to actually have either FileMaker 20.1, 19.6, 19.5, or 19.4.2, just to make sure everything works properly. In terms of FileMaker Cloud 2023, so version 20.1, it's not out yet. It will be coming out very shortly. We are finalizing some small problems around it, in terms of, especially, we still have customers that have older versions of FileMaker Pro connecting to latest version of FileMaker Cloud. And if we do the updates and they haven't updated, they won't be able to actually get access to their cloud. So we want to make sure that people have got time to update the latest version of 19 to be able to actually do the update of FileMaker Cloud. So now we're going to go into the Claris FileMaker server side of it. Most of the work that we do on the admin console and all the stuff in the background is to make, and I always say that, and people sometimes say, well, you shouldn't be saying it, but I keep on saying it, we are trying to make FileMaker server boring. And when I say boring, is basically you install it, you put your files, you create your schedule scripts, you create your backup, you set up your logging system, and then it just runs. And then you don't have to worry about everything, because it just does what it's meant to be doing, which is boringly hosting securely files to the end users. That's what we want basically to do. So when I sometimes had a discussion with a French partner a long time ago, where he spends about an hour every day on his admin FileMaker server to look at admin console and to make changes, I'm like, either try a new sport, or there's something actually doesn't work for you. And he's still using is using FileMaker Server 17, that fair enough has a lot of issues. So I'm saying it's move to the next one, and then you'll be better on 2023. So what did we actually do? So the FileMaker team works heavily on making sure the performance and scalability actually can get increased. So we've increased the amount of hosts that you can have, the file that you can host on a single FileMaker server. It's gone from 125 to 256. In a lot of cases, maybe you don't actually need that extra bit of files, but it's kind of useful for our Claris partners that offer solution bundle agreement to customers. So we have a lot of partners that actually offered freely baked solutions to customers. They offer the hosting for these customers. By having more files onto a system, they can actually leverage the hardware with more users. So it brings down the cost for them. It makes their life a lot easier, and it makes management of server even better than before. Next area where we actually have been doing a lot of work over the last year and 18 months is around the usage of WebDirect on FileMaker. So 2 aspects that we basically worked on. First one was to be able to figure out a way to increase how many users you can have on one FileMaker server deployment. Before 2023, we were limiting to 500, and that was kind of the technical limitation that we sort of putting into the product. And we know we have a lot of people that might not necessarily need 1,000 every day, but they're part of the year where they might actually need that. And we do know, again, on the SBA community side, that we have some partners that offer their solution through WebDirect to pretty much everyone now, and they need to be able to have a system where they can have more users at the same time. And the way we've done it is twofold. So the first thing is basically says we use Java to actually get the Vaadin framework to actually produce the WebDirect pages. And the Java 11 that we're using is kind of outdated, has some bugs, has some stuff that we can sort of play around. So we decided to actually move to a newer version of it. We didn't actually move to the very latest of Java, which I think 19, if I'm not mistaken. So we moved to 17 because the work that we had to do to move to 11 to 17, making sure everything was working properly, making sure that files that had been created in the early days of FileMaker 12 and FileMaker 13, whatever, but using the FMPG 12 extension would be able to actually work properly along the way. So we don't want to break your solutions. We want to make sure that everything that used to work is going to work better. We don't want to basically bring in one solution. And twofold, on the other side is when we're going up to 1,000, one of the things that we're working is, like I say, is, well, are we going to basically increase how many connections you're going to have per web publishing engine, or do we make the environment of a secondary machine better than before? And we decided to actually go is, let's try to do a bit of both. So let's see whether we can increase how many connections you can have per web publishing engine, and see whether we can increase essentially the stability, so that if you have 100 users on a web publishing engine, they're going to be able to actually work properly. Nothing's going to crash and everything works the way it's meant to be working. And so we did that work. And by opening up a bit more the code and say the FileMaker server of the primary server, we were able to actually get it to 1,000. Essentially, most of the work to get to 1,000 and testing and is done on Ubuntu, because we could leverage the web server Nginx Plus, because it has a very low balancer. We have no control. So to get to 1,000, and if you really need 1,000 users, you will have to use the Ubuntu Linux version. You can get to as well better numbers on the Mac and the Windows, but you won't be able to actually sort of get to those type of numbers. Obviously, like we say, is depending on the hardware that you're using, the app that you've created. Maybe in some cases, getting to 1,000 might not work exactly the way you want to, but we're hoping to actually be able to actually sort of get there. On top of that, what we did add was support for Ubuntu 22, both on the Intel and the ARM processor. Reason for that is it's kind of easier for us to do a lot of the work on Ubuntu, especially 22. We know there's a lot of more data centers out there. They're offering both versions of Intel processors and ARM processors. In a lot of cases, ARM processors are actually being cheaper. So if you want to run your codes down, it's actually quite cool. And on top of that, if you live in the Mac world and you want to basically use when the version of Claris Server 2023 comes out, you'll be able to actually virtualize Ubuntu on a Mac Mini or MacBook, whatever, and be able to actually use Claris Server with those processors. So we're trying to basically make all the usage of the whole platform a lot better. Improvements on the admin API as well and data API. And we've updated the Node.js version 2.18 on the main console so that the refresh rate is nicely improved, and that just the whole environment works better for everyone. As well, we've added a couple of log options. So there's a script event log and there's a FileMaker scripting engine log that have been added as well to the system. And we've basically been improving as well notification. So this is a quick screenshot of a FileMaker server running with 1,026 connection. We've been able to actually get it up to about 1,100, but on average 1,000, we'll be able to actually get there quite nicely. In terms of how you actually sort of get it, you have to go through the web publishing tab of the connector side of FileMaker server, and then you'll be able to actually add the secondary machine to your system quite easily. The thing you have to do as well is your primary server will basically only work as a data server, and the extra secondary machine will basically be doing the work of FileMaker of the web direct sort of pages. As you can see, most of the secondary machine have roughly around 95 to basically 110 connection at the same time. So the idea is to be able to actually sort of get it to 110, 120 maximum, but we don't want to basically get this machine to do too much work. And some of the other work that we actually did inside of FileMaker was to make sure that we could avoid as much as we can corruption of data, memory leaks, any issues actually comes out of FileMaker server. Basically, the idea is let's make it very, very boring so that it doesn't crash. You don't actually have to look too much into it. It does the job that it's meant to be doing. So persistent cache basically is a new way for us to separate the normal caching system inside the FileMaker so that we can avoid more database corruption and especially minimize data losses if the FileMaker server, the service process actually crashes for whatever reason. So the way we've done it is you had a normal cache in FileMaker managed by the cache manager. What we're doing now is we're splitting the amount of cache that you've assigned to your FileMaker server into two caches. So the normal cache that basically keeps on doing the job that it's doing, so moving data from the cache to data file. And then this persistent cache will stay on the side, will reside in the memory of your machine. And if the FileMaker server process crashes, when the server restarts, or it will be basically able to grab the data in that persistent cache and rebuild the file properly if any data is missing. If you want, on top of that, extra safety, there is the option to save that persistent cache to the disk. So moving it from the memory of the machine into an SSD or hard disk, and that will give you extra power, especially if you're thinking that you're going to have power outage. Obviously, we haven't enabled it by default. It's up to you to actually sort of enable it in your system. You can do it through the admin console, through the CLI or the admin API. Kind of straightforward to actually sort of do it. You just need to do a restart of the server for it to actually work properly. If you only have the persistent cache on, enabled, you might see a tiny bit of drop in terms of performance. And when I say tiny, I'm like 2-3%, something like that, because the system is actually going to write twice the same information to two different caches. So it's not one cache being written to and then being copied. It's basically the same action is being done twice to the system. And if you put the sync as well to the hard, to the disk, that will take basically an extra bit of work that the system has to do. So if you have any, what I say is basically test it, see if it actually really does work for you. And normally you shouldn't actually see too much of a drop. The next one I'm going to talk about really quickly, but basically we had OData enabled across all the platforms. So we started using it on Linux, then we enable it for the Mac and the Windows Server, and we've updated it now with 2023 to be compliant with OData 4.0.1, and essentially it's to be able to actually do both patches and deletes across reference and related entities. If you know about OData and if you use it, it's great for you. If you've never used OData, you might quickly sort of look onto a website, go to the guide around OData, and it's really useful if you're looking for integrating FileMaker with other system, because it's actually very powerful and can do a lot of stuff for you. I think we actually brought as well inside the server is a way for removing garbage that Java creates. So we know that Java isn't the perfect tool, and even though it's used across the platform, it has issues with memory leaks. It has issues with sometimes in performance. It has issues when it goes completely mad, basically, and overtakes the memory of your system, and everything crashes and you can't do anything with your system. So we created basically a way to be able to actually remove the memory print that the Java leaks actually create so that your system can run stably. So we created two new system scripts. You can run them manually, or they could be run on a schedule. There's one if you have just one server running and your primary machine is running the web publishing engine, or the other one if you're running on a secondary machine. We use, again, the JDK from the Java 17. And a couple of notes at the bottom is because we're actually using the Java JDK that's running inside the FileMaker server folder, if you're doing an update, what we'll do is we'll remove basically the older version of JARE 11 that we used to do before, so that we can put in place JDK 17. If you are using a different version of Java on your system outside the FileMaker server folder, we're not going to touch that. So potentially you'll have two versions of Java running on the same system. If it's needed for you, we're not going to basically move away from that. But anything in the FileMaker server, we control that. And so we'll do some cleanup to make sure that everything works. There is as well a blog entry on the engineering blog that actually goes through the 4 different ways of how Java garbage collection actually does work. So there's very sort of kind of boring but technical information. You can go through the blog if this is something they use heavily, and you can actually specify there's a file that you can actually modify, and you can specify which type of collection engine you want to use. Some actually are meant to be working really quickly. Others are meant to be doing some extra work to verify that data integrity sort of keeps there. But depending on what you need to do, you've got the various options out there. Next one, so we put it as a preview, very similar to even like the persistent cache is a preview. So when we say preview, essentially is we want customer feedback to say what we've actually done is on the right path and whether it's useful for you. If we get a lot of feedback saying, actually, we did this to be modified, then because being a preview, it's easier for us to actually change our mind and work on that. So we've added Active Directory support for Ubuntu through ADFS. It's straightforward. You go through the admin console, you'll be able to actually add in all the groups. And then for that, you can control who does signing of databases and admin roles. Very nicely done. But if you're using Ubuntu, it's kind of cool to actually have it there. We've added an extra menu for the backup settings around the canceled option that you have. So we've added the option to be able to actually do cancel backups in 19.6. And we had requests from people saying is when I cancel a backup, there might be a reason. It could be that my system, for whatever, I had to cancel it, or a user decided to actually cancel it, and there was no information for me to figure that one out. So what we're doing now is giving you the option for you to be able to keep your cancel backup in your backup folder. And what we'll do is we'll have the prefix cancel, the date, and then you can actually keep it on the side. So, and that way you can figure out whether it was done intentionally or whether there's an error with the system, and then you can fix the issue that you can have there. So this is the list of the overview of the various features enhancement that we have. Some of the nice stuff that we have is now is you can do save as a PDF inside the data API. In the Ubuntu 22 folder called Tools, once you've installed the FileMaker server, in Tools, you'll be able to actually get access to Docker scripts for Ubuntu 20 and 22. You'll be able to actually get access as well to the data migration tool as well that's stored in there. And there's a few other Python scripts to be able to actually get the PKI key that is in FileMaker server for giving access to outside people with limited access to various parts of the admin console. The other thing that we've actually been working on is to make it easier for people running older version of FileMaker server, namely FileMaker server 16, where when you export the information from your FileMaker server 16 through the export of the schedules, the settings, they can be now imported back into FileMaker 2023 because all the features that were in FileMaker 16 and now actually been put back. So all the admin groups and also information. So if you're running older version of 16, I strongly suggest that either you get a trial of FileMaker server through the sales, or if you have a maintenance contract, set up a separate machine, install server 2023, and then move your admin groups and all information from your old server and start using that as well. A couple of stuff as well on schedule, the name limits, that was been a problem, and some notification of backups not being working properly. Tech specs again, so for macOS, kind of straightforward, always the last two version, and for Windows, we're supporting server 22 and 19, both with the desktop experience required or needed. And then for Ubuntu, so now we have more flavors. So we have Ubuntu 20 on Intel processors, both the server and the desktop version, and Ubuntu 22 for server and desktop, both Intel and ARM version. You can use a desktop version if you want to, but it's not required. We do most of the testing, so we have an asterisk saying that we don't test it as fully as your other system, but it basically works the same way. And in terms of clients I was mentioning before, it's 20.1, 19.6, 19.5, and 19.4.2 that are being supported. Now I'm going to hand over to Ronnie, who's going to talk about Connect and do a quick demo for you.
Thanks, Doug. Well, let me see if I share my screen. And all right, we'll talk about Clarus Connect. I do have some slides. I only have 3, but I think they're really, great. So if you haven't tried Clarus Connect, don't remember about it, we do have a product called Clarus Connect, which is an integration platform as a service. And if you've never tried it, you don't have an excuse anymore. We are making a free tier of Clarus Connect available with the launch of FileMaker 2023. So there's a fully featured plan, completely free. It has all the features of the Clarus Connect platform. So you have access to all the connectors, all of the features of the entire platform. The only thing that we are going to be limiting is the amount of steps that you can run on a monthly basis, but you can have as many flows as you want, active, inactive, again, all the connectors and fully featured. So again, no excuse now for you to start using Connect and putting your integrations, having them set up and connecting with all of your different applications, including with FileMaker. So in the very beginning, we've had FileMaker connectors in Clarus Connect allow you to make really wonderful integrations between your applications and the rest of the world. And to make that even easier for you to connect your existing solutions, we're bringing up a new feature with the launch of FileMaker 2023. But one of the things that we've been wanting to do, we're really putting a lot of effort here at Clarus, is having all of the products talk to one another much better. Right? We want to make sure that the platform feels coherent and that you can leverage the different features from the different applications within the platform with ease. You can discover them and have them talk to one another in the best way possible. And while we've had FileMaker connectors in Clarus Connect from day one, we want to figure out how we can make it easier for you to integrate your FileMaker solutions using Clarus Connect. So we went back and talked with customers and partners, asked them, hey, why, what are the biggest challenges for you to getting your FileMaker solution integrated with Clarus Connect? And we heard a lot about just triggering a flow in Connect from FileMaker. And I completely understand why. There's a lot of actually steps to get it to configure it right. You go to Connect, you create the flow with the trigger. You have to follow several steps there. You actually have to copy a URL and a specific JSON object, go into FileMaker, create a script with an insert from URL script step, configure the curl options in there. You probably have to create a variable with the JSON. And if you miss any one of these steps, like, it doesn't work. So with FileMaker 2023, we're introducing a new script step called Trigger Clarus Connect Flow. And it does exactly what the name implies. This script trigger, this script step is designed specifically to talk with Clarus Connect and help you trigger those flows in the easiest way possible. And we've already heard some really great success stories from partners and customers out in the community testing this out. This is actually a real flow. This is a real script and FileMaker solution using a traditional integration, right? So using insert from URL, handling the authentication, all the variables, the configuration, the formatting of the data internally in FileMaker. But by migrating that into Clarus Connect and leveraging the functionality in Clarus Connect, you can drastically reduce what the script and the complexity of the script to deal with those integration. And as an additional benefit to that, well, you don't have to replicate this integration throughout all of your files. So, because if you offset that over to Clarus Connect, you have high availability, really fast performance. And for most of the time, you only have to create the integration once instead of having that same script, right, copying and modifying it over and over through all of your applications. So I'm going to take a moment or two to show you a little bit what this script step looks like in action, and hopefully this works since I'm trying to do this live. So here is a Clarus Connect flow, and I've already configured here. I added just the trigger over here from the FileMaker server connector. And when you open it, you've got a set of instructions over here. This is what we're trying to eliminate and make it a lot easier. But what I want you to focus is that we generate a unique URL for every time that you use this. And the idea is that I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go into FileMaker and try to trigger that flow from over there. Now, normally I would have to use pre-FileMaker 2023, use the insert from URL script step, put the URL in there, and configure a lot of things. But I'm going to type in here and look for my new script step, trigger Clarus Connect Flow. I'm going to hit return. And the first thing you're going to notice is that we automatically put in the URL in there. So we're taking that step away from you. The URL, we got it in the clipboard. We're looking for it. We're looking for a Clarus Connect URL. We're putting it in there and taking that step away from you. We'll continuously iterate on this and make this a lot easier. But that's step number one. Step number two, in using the traditional way, using the insert from URL script step, you would have to configure your curl options and put in the JSON data. But with this new script step, we've got a separate parameter here specifically designed here for the JSON object. And you open up here to your familiar script engine, so you can use anything you want. You could put a literal JSON object in here, but you definitely would want to use the JSON functionality that's built into the calculation engine. And you can reference anything you want. You can reference any of your fields, and any data that you want to send to Clarus Connect to be used in the flow, you're going to want to put it in here. And you can configure this in any way you want. You have full control of what this JSON object looks like. And finally, not least, but you have ability also to specify what the target is, where you want to store the response you're going to get back from calling the flow. So you can choose a field to store it there, or you can choose a variable. It could be local, or it could be a global one there as well. Very similar to the insert from the URL script step that you have over there. That's basically it. That's all I have to do. So if I were to run this, and I'm going to run it real quick. Now going back over here, maybe we'll add another action and say we want to tell everybody on Slack whenever we run this. We'll do maybe send it over to this channel, and then the message might come directly from the trigger, right? So the information that's coming from directly from that FileMaker script. So I'll go ahead and enable this, go back over here, and we'll run that script once again. And that's about it. It runs, and I'll go back here. I've got my Slack over here, and it ran that flow, triggered from FileMaker. The data that passed from FileMaker went to Clarus Connect. I was able to retrieve it and use it in the rest of the flow, in this case, through Slack. So once again, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to integrate your existing applications from FileMaker, and you leveraging the great automation integration capabilities of Clarus Connect. So with that, I'll stop and hand over back to Doug. Thanks.
Thank you, Ronnie. Last one. So we mentioned it earlier in the call, but just to reiterate, Clarus Engage 2024 will take place in Austin, Texas. For you in Texas, it's kind of cool. From February 6th to the 8th, so 3 days of getting together and talking about everything about FileMaker. And that's pretty much it for us. We're going to go to Q&A now. And so, as I say, ask away. We are there for that.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I'm dusting off my considerably old FileMaker skills on a new app. And I discovered the add-on for rich text and wanted to use that in my application. The problem is that I don't know what is required to output that resulting HTML that produces in a formatted for print method. You know, how do I get that HTML formatted on a printed page? And I found custom functions, none of which work. And web viewers do awkward page breaks if it spans beyond the page boundary. So I'm curious if 2023 has a solution to that.
Specifically with the rich text add-on that we created, I would say not really. So the reason we basically made JavaScript easier to use in FileMaker is there is a huge amount of JavaScript libraries out there that could do some of that work. The rich text we put was kind of an entry level for people to actually start playing with it. Yeah, I would say is either you find the JavaScript library that actually sort of does work for you and can actually do the printing properly.
Yeah, I would probably.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the rich text editor feature would be a heck of a lot more useful if you had a companion add-on next to it that says print this. Format this for printing, and it comes out on a printed report. It does page breaks properly, and so on and so forth.
Well, FileMaker, if your field spans a page break in FileMaker, it's not going to print well anyway. So like my other advice would be ask this question in Clara's community. There's lots of expertise there with both the stock add-ons and other add-ons that might make things a little easier for you.
I was just curious if there was a feature in 2023 that addressed this.
No, so we're doing some work for the next update of FileMaker 2023, where we are fixing some issues with the add-ons. We're trying to open it a bit more, especially around the add-on sort of tables and all the sort of the back-end sort of system and how it works, how you do updates to make it easier for you. But yeah, that's a good use case of actually seeing whether there's anything we can do on those.
I like that. Let's look into maybe adding a print. I would say probably add a save to PDF doc, right? And that add-on, and then you can do PDF. You can print whatever way you want. There are a lot of JavaScript libraries that allow you to save your page, the doc, to the DOM, sorry, to a PDF. So that might be a route right now. But yeah, maybe we could look into adding it ourselves. But I agree with Rosemary. Ask the community. I'm sure somebody's already solved this.
Okay.
So I have a question. Going back to perform script on server with callback script. What happens in that situation when a user, let's say, for instance, is either running another script, or if they have maybe moved to using a different FileMaker application than the one that called the original perform script on server?
So as long as the user, the session is still open, it will be able to actually sort of send the data back. So if you're quitting and you're coming back and the session basically identify changes, that's where basically it will disconnect and won't be able to actually send the request to run the callback. Right. If you are, so if your system is idle, you'll get basically the callback be run straight away. If you are inside the record and you're modifying data, it's going to wait for you to commit whatever is in your memory to the system, and then it's going to run the script. If you are running other scripts, it's going to wait for basically for your system to actually go into idle mode, and actually will send you the callback script, and then you'll be able to actually run it.
Is there a timeout for that? At all?
Is there a timeout for that?
In other words, if, say for instance, you're running on like a really intensive script that's running for an hour and a half. I know that's very unusual, but just out of curiosity. I mean, does the server?
I don't believe there's going to be a timeout eventually. I don't know the length of it, so I'll check with you, and we'll probably put in the release notes. Yeah.
And if you're working, let's say, for instance, you moved into a separate app, whether or not it's hosted on the same server or not, will it bring the app that is getting the callback script back to the front automatically? Yeah. I mean, how does that work?
It will bring it back. Well, it'll actually run it. So depending on what's in your script, if you're asking it to be in the forefront, it will come in the front. If it's basically just doing whatever, it will do so.
It just does its thing wherever it happens to be, and it behaves in whatever way the script itself tells it to run.
Yeah. So if you're not telling it to basically refresh the window and put the forefront, it will stay whatever it's actually meant to be running. I think we had a question yesterday: is if you have like the execute script step in your script, it will still basically run the callback script.
Okay. And I actually had one other question, and this is tied in a little bit to the previous question about the rich text editor. I love that OAuth is now something that is covered in SendMail script. Are there plans? Can you talk to any plans? I don't know if even, having a roadmap discussion is even appropriate here, but sending HTML data over the SendMail script, is that something that's in the pipeline somewhere?
So like you're saying here, Clarus has a plan. Essentially, one of the things that we kind of doing, hence getting this integration with Clarus Connect easier to be done through FileMaker. Some of the work that we're doing in Studio, stuff that you'll see in the future, you'll see new features or enhancements that not might necessarily be living inside the FileMaker Pro because of limitation of all technologies. We will leverage one like Connect or Studio to actually do some of that work. So currently in Connect, you can send an email through Outlook or Google Mail, either in text format or HTML. And Connect actually does a lot of the work for you. And so we are more interested in actually saying is how do we actually leverage that? Because the thing is, whether you're doing on Pro and Connect, you're pretty much doing the same. Is you have fields, you take that field, you want it to be placed in special order. You want formatting with HTML around it. A CSS actually does the work for you. You want to be able to actually send it, get information saying it's been sent properly. That's what basically sending emails is about. We kind of know that there's a lot of stuff that people want to do directly inside the FileMaker Pro, but in a lot of cases, if it's run in an environment, especially like Connect, we'll basically be able to actually give you a more powerful system and newer sort of tools to make it work better for you. Currently, I would say FileMaker the way, and especially like there was a lot of redesign we knew to in the send mail page, so kind of looking to actually leverage a bit more what Connect can do for us and Studio eventually.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll add on the on the callbacks, perform script on server with callback. Vince Manano wrote a really good blog about it. If you click on the last link I just dropped in chat, that is a roundup of everything the community published last week that I am aware of. So there's a lot of great articles, tutorials, podcasts. Rick Coleman did 2 podcasts and Richard Carlton's live stream. So all of that is linked there.
Yep. Okay. Much appreciated for that, Rosemary. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Steve has a question here from the audience.
Yeah. So you've released now 2023, and you've stated at the marketing level that it's your intent to continue with yearly releases going forward. Do you have a sense with large, complicated, established systems when?
Sorry, we've lost the sound. Sorry, hang on. Say again.
Do you have a sense with large established systems what kind of a pace we should be pursuing for testing, upgrading, rolling out the new versions? 18 to 19 was for many of my customers a major lift to get from those versions, and we'd like to stay more current. But at least my style of customer is not a Clarus released it, boom, we're upgrading, right? It's a multi-step, multi-pronged effort to get from one version to the next. So can you speak to your cadence and what you're hoping to see for adoption? What are you thinking from your side that you're hoping for?
So obviously we're hoping for people to be able to move as quickly as possible. We know it's really a lot of the time is actually a pain. We've known that especially in the larger organization, the harder it is to just do an update of FileMaker Pro. Server-wise, it's the same. And so some of the work that we are doing is to be able to kind of go, well, the server can be updated in a quicker fashion with the new tools that we're building. So like the quick start restart, the persistent cache, the end game of that is for you to be able to quickly do an update to FileMaker server straight from the admin console without having to actually quit the system, redo a restart. We are trying to leverage all of that so that we can do this update cycle a lot quicker. On the FileMaker Pro side and the client side, hence a lot of the work we're doing on WebDirect, we know for a lot of organizations sometimes it would be better maybe if they had a web-based environment. Like we have requests from people saying FileMaker Pro is great, but for my end users, if I could actually have the system in a web-based environment, it will make it easier for me to be able to actually update it. And so this is kind of the thing that we are trying to figure out is if we build a better web direct environment, and if we build basically a better FileMaker / Claris web environment, then this problem of doing updates will kind of go away, because you're not going to have to figure out a way to reach out all your users and do the update of FileMaker Pro. Other works that we are doing as well is in terms of the software lifecycle, the versioning of FileMaker. It's always a pain when you're doing your development on a production environment, you test it and you put it into production. You have to normally take the file down from one server, put it onto the server and do the updates. So some of the work that we're doing, even with the save a copy of XML and the data migration in the upgrade tool, is to make it easier as well for you to be able to have various FileMaker server running side by side and to move basically the schema from different systems quite easily without having to actually sort of take the whole system down, copy file, move files across, and just restart it. So it's a long sort of vision of saying is we are trying to build the tools to make that work for you easier, both for the development where you had to do and for explaining to your customer how you're going to be able to actually do the maintenance of getting the latest software. So I know that if you have customers on 19, there's going to be a point where by moving to 23, you'll do this large update, and then we're hoping to be able to actually give you tools in the next sort of 6 months to make this a lot easier for you to be able to actually do across multiple, a lot of users. So we in trying to improve Sparkle updates so that the updates of FileMaker can actually be a lot easier to be done. One of the things that we didn't do between 19 and 20 was not to actually have Sparkle update on 19 moving you to 2023, because we know that in some cases you want to test it, but eventually we'll be able to see whether we could do it so that the Sparkle update of FileMaker Pro could actually directly update the latest version of FileMaker, whatever that version might be, without having to go through very cumbersome steps that we currently have. So it's not really like a lot of people say, it's not we want it to be fixed now. We know it's going to take a bit of time, but we are trying to actually sort of make headways to facilitate the upgrade principle of the FileMaker world. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
This is Taylor here. I had a question. I know you said you were going to work on a blog for showing how to use the OAuth 2 in the mail, send mail thing. Hopefully you'll make it there's an example out, someone showed how to, connect up to, for example, Azure that is all in German. I'm hoping you guys will have a blog thing that's actually got pictures of what you're doing in the Google and Microsoft consoles, so we can see exactly what to do. If you could put out a blog that would have all of that and those instructions are posted in the community, that would be really helpful, because there are a lot of us that are struggling to actually make that work. So, or let's just put it this way, we haven't succeeded yet. And
so
the Google Cloud Console was very, very confusing.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. We are building this blog so that we have screenshots of where to go. And the reason that I was saying is basically it's going to hard is, as you're saying, is the console, depending on the type of account that you have or depending on what you've done before, will basically kind of be different. So we're trying to figure out with the generic sort of stuff that Google and Microsoft offers you, where you'll be able to actually find the information. It's taking a bit of time, because if you've been through the console of Google or Microsoft, not everything is easy to find. But we're hoping to actually have that as soon as possible. We'll see whether we have one before the other, so whether we'll be able to actually release the Google one before the Microsoft one, or whether we wait for two of them to be done at the same time. But yeah, we have clever engineers and QA people working on that now.
Something you should keep in mind for that is that if you're implementing OAuth 2 for a client, not your own domain, it's especially difficult because you can't necessarily log into the workspace account or the cloud console with somebody else's credentials. And when those providers send verification emails, they don't necessarily come to you, they come to whoever is the administrator of that domain.
Yeah, the person doing the work will have to actually be an admin that environment, so that they have full control and they can see, like, especially I think there's some on some accounts to be able to actually get the API keys, you have to actually have complete control of the system.
That's right.
Okay, one other question I have. I've been noticing now that I've got my development server moved up to 2023 and I'm connecting it to it. It takes another like 2 or 3 seconds to initially log in before I get the credential prompt. I assume it's caching something or something, or I'm trying to say, is this a problem that I'm having in my network that things are slow, or is this just kind of an expected behavior that when you go to the host, you list your host, you click on the file, and it pauses longer than it used to in 19.6 by a couple of seconds, 2 or 3 seconds before you get your credential prompt. Is that normal experience, or is that something that just I'm having problems with?
So it's not meant to be normal. I haven't seen it. The one thing that we put by default now is to be able to actually list the views, list the databases on the files on your server. It's going to ask for username and password. If you've saved that in memory, the system is basically going to check your keychain, get information, and then lets you view it. So there's an extra step basically at the beginning when you connect to be able to actually view the files, but it should actually be that slow. Ideally, what I could do is, if you could do it, is actually when you have the issue, is do recording and then put it on the ETS, or just send by email, so that we can actually check whether there's any issues with that. But it shouldn't be normal. No, it shouldn't be taking any more time, really.
Okay, I'll put a video because I can show both, so I'll do that.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
Okay, well, I think we're at the point where we're going to wind things down here. We really appreciate you, Douglas and Ronnie, for your presentations today, and we certainly are glad that you guys came in, and we're happy to do some more learning and ready to dive into the new world of 2023. I'm sure after I've rolled out several more this month here, we'll have some more questions and we'll be on the community posting away. So we appreciate your support on that.
Yep, I have one more thing.
Okay.
I'm dropping it in chat right now, and Taylor also email this to you so you can share it out to the group. But we'd really appreciate it if you'd fill out our survey. And this is both to give us a thumbs up, thumbs down on the presentation, but also on what do you think of FileMaker 2023, and how we're doing more broadly. Yeah.
Is there a separate question in that survey about how much we like the logo?
Not specifically, no. I've got one other thing too. If you're not kind of actively active in the Claris community, I asked a couple of questions last week around research, about how can marketing do better. I know I've seen some of you in those questions, but again, dropping in chat. There's 3 simple questions from our new VP of marketing about, kind of how are we doing? What could we do better? What do you wish we never did? What do you want us to do more of?
And where is that?
It's the about the community topic. If you go to the about the community topic, there's 3 posts pinned at the top of that. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll see everybody next month, and thank you for being here. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody.